Pedophiles are treated better than people who write nasty things on the internet. And I say that because a convicted child rapist has escaped jail for a second time because our prisons are too overcrowded. So instead of banging up vile monsters, we're putting people who write some tweets during the riots in the slammer for arguably harsh and draconian sentences. So let me tell you about this latest wrong-un. Rhys Newman, he was handed a suspended sentence last December for the historic rape of a girl under the age of 14, and that was in 2005. Under the terms of his sentence, he was ordered to sign the sex offenders register and had to tell police if he went on holiday. But of course, surprise, surprise, in May, he jetted off to Egypt and didn't tell anyone. He breached the terms of his sentence and was hauled back to court where the judge said to him, and I quote, "If we had been in different times, then it would have been virtually inevitable you would have gone into custody. The only reason you've escaped immediate custody today is because of the prison overcrowding crisis." There we have it. So meanwhile, if you so much as observe this month's riots from the sidelines as an innocent bystander, another judge previously warned you'll be refused bail and banged up in custody too. And elsewhere, the mother of teenager Gordon Gault, who was killed in a knife attack, has expressed her shock and disbelief after being told in a letter that one of the people jailed for her son's death will be released early from prison as part of Labour's plans to make way for new inmates. Gordon, who was aged just 14, died of a stab wound in 2022 in Newcastle following an attack by Carlos Nito and Lawson Natty, pictured here. Natty will have served just 40% of his entire sentence when he's released early in just a few weeks' time. And last but not least, today it's revealed 30-year-old Walid Raoul, also known as the Rolex Ripper, has also been allowed to walk free after attempting to steal a 50 grand watch in London. And again, the judge blamed prison overcrowding. He has 9 previous convictions, unbelievable, for 14 offences. So there we have it. Dare to type some rubbish on your computer in Britain and Keir Starmer will destroy your life. Child rapists, killers and robbers, meanwhile, well, carry on as you are, you're fine. Reaction now from Liz Kershaw, Charlie Rowley and James Snyder. Good evening, panel. Thank you for joining me.
Hiya.
Liz Kershaw, you were sort of shaking your head as I was reading that out. I mean, a litany of examples where serious criminals should be behind bars, but they're not, and instead people who write hurty words on the internet are.
Well, the first thing to say, Ben, is the spooky coincidence of all these courts around the country with different judges or magistrates taking the same harsh stance against the people in the rights. Like there's a central policy on this. And one of the pillars of our democracy is that the judiciary and the lawmakers in Parliament are separate. And the judges are independent of our politicians. But I think any normal thinking person will put 2 and 2 together and think there's been some mandate from above. In fact, he's more or less expressed it, Keir Starmer, that you're going to come down harsh on these people, you're going to bang them up, whether it was for standing watching, whether... There was a woman the other day jailed for throwing water at a policeman.
Oh, it's just a joke.
Or that poor deluded woman in Cheshire who's caring for her husband. What sort of dreadful life has she got? And she lost it and she tweeted about mosques. It was inciting violence and that is wrong and criminal. But she shouldn't be locked up. But, mate, that's what really worries me about this. But, yeah, you've got people being let out of prison now who I think it's questionable whether or not they are a danger to the public. I tend to think some of them are. And should be incarcerated far more than somebody who's a keyboard warrior.
Oh, I mean, of course there are dangers. But child rapists, robbers who go around stealing 50 grand watches, and killers who they've plunged knives into people and killed a young boy. These people are walking the streets, Charlie Rowley, and yet, as Liz said, keyboard warriors, whether the stuff they said was disgusting or not, a lot of it was, they're banged up for what I'd argue is pretty draconian sentences.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, you know, the point is that you've got to have enough prison places for all of these people, frankly. So, of course, you don't want to release people who are violent, people that are a threat to us in our everyday lives, whether they're robbers, killers, murderers, rapists, and the like of that particular low-life ilk. So you don't want those people in and around society. But of course, I think if you are a keyboard warrior, if you are inciting hate, if you are, throwing water at a police officer or an emergency service worker, I do think that actually warrants a bit of a more than a slap on the wrist.
Oh, Charlie, come on.
And if a judge decides, as Liz was saying, if that's the judicial system, if a judge decides that actually that is the appropriate sentencing, then there should be a prison place for you.
They didn't all those judges around the country didn't independently, with their own thought process, decide on those levels of sentencing. They were told from above. You know, throwing water at somebody, a police officer, and yet we still haven't had any arrests when caught on video were those thugs in Manchester Airport punching policemen and women in the face. They still haven't been charged.
Oh, yes. And they absolutely should be. And what's annoying, I think, for most people is that the way the criminal justice system has worked at record and breakneck speed to get the sort of protesters through the justice system, and not people who actually need to be in jail. But the water issue is not a trivial one, because I think there are probably one or two people in this building that would have been happy and rightly calling for someone to go to spend a bit of jail time for throwing a milkshake over Nigel Farage or this parrot.
Well, no, not
I think
me.
that's absolutely...
I think...
No, I'm not suggesting, but I just think there would be people that think that that's totally inappropriate.
I think you'd be hard-pressed. James,
and I think doing that to a police officer is equally inappropriate.
I think there are a whole load of offences that shouldn't have jail time attached and should have other things. I think throwing a milkshake over somebody is not something that should have jail time. I think a lot of things that people say and write as opposed to do shouldn't be having jail terms. And some of the prison sentences that have gone down for protesters, particularly environmental protesters and some pro-Palestinian protesters, have been extremely over the top. And I think the balance is completely out of kilter. If there is a shortage of prison places, and personally I'm in favour of investment in prevention and rehabilitation rather than a dramatic expansion of the prison system, we need to have ways for dealing with lower level crimes that doesn't just lead to putting people in prison, because if you don't, then you get this sort of situation, which I think we all agree is ridiculous.
What do you make of Liz's very good point, actually, Liz? I'll slip you your fiver later. You slip me a fiver. Very good point about the apparent separation of the government and the judiciary. You know, that it's meant to be independent, and yet it seems this is very controlled. I mean, of course, Keir Starmer was head of the CPS. Has he just given his mates a call or a text and said, you know, do me a favour, make sure this lot get harsh sentences?
I don't know, but it does seem like there is thinking with one mind across the judiciary on the severity of sentences for those involved in racist violence, but also for those that were involved with saying things online going in both directions. I've seen, for example, the case, I think it's brought using the Online Harms Act against somebody who, to my view, seems to have libelled Tommy Robinson, but in my view it's not a crime to libel somebody. Tommy Robinson is entitled to sue the person for saying that he said something that he didn't say. And it looks like there are efforts to be very firm, going the other way to avoid the erroneous charge of two-tier policing, two-tier justice.
Charlie?
Look, I'm quite a liberal person, as I think most people might know by now, but I have to say, I just don't accept the reason why you go to prison, and the reason why there is a prison sentence and a prison place for you, is this: if you are going to be a threat to the public. Now, James, you talk about Just Stop Oil. They absolutely should be banged up. They bring down our national infrastructure. They stop ambulances saving other people's lives.
Let me just stop you. I agree, but when our prisons are full and there's a choice between a child rapist or Just Stop Oil going in the slammer, you're going to pick the nonce every day of the week.
Again, I'm not going to get into the...
Yes or no, Charlie?
Of course you're going to say, but this particular story, let's just be absolutely clear, and there is absolutely no justification to. But you know, we're not talking about a 30-year-old man now who raped a 14-year-old girl. They were both 14 at the time. The offence took place in 2005. The reason what the judge has said to him today that you can't go to prison is because prisons are full, because he's tried to leave the country and just to go on holiday and didn't tell anyone. Not because of the offence that took place in 2005, where he should have gone to prison.
Can I just tell you why I've watched this and my blood has boiled? My mother, carer, emptied her bank account. There was £86,000 in her bank account and it disappeared. And I forensically, myself, traced all where these payments had been made and where the money had gone, took it to the police. It went to court, and the carer was given an 18-month suspended sentence.
Yeah.
She more or less, you know, my mother just declined after that and died very quickly. But I just, at the time, I was so upset that I sat in that courtroom and heard the judge say she could go home.
What was the reason for such a lenient sentence?
Because she had a dependent child.
Oh, again, another...
He said he wasn't locking her up because she had a child of school age, about 10 or 11 years old. We'd lost my mum, all her money had gone, everything. But I sat there and heard that day, and I wrote about it, and I spoke about it on TV subsequently. But can you imagine when I've been sitting there watching people go to prison for sending an email or standing by a protest or throwing water? And what I learned from that court case was the judge's hands were kind of tied, because there are maximum sentences in grades depending on how much money, you know, it's all graded. And he said to me, I went up to the desk and I said, I'm disappointed. Oh, that's all. And he said, I'm sorry, that's all I could do. They have sentencing guidelines. Suddenly there are no sentencing guidelines, and you can get a custodial sentence for something very menial. And I just think it sucks.
Yeah, it's a joke. And bless your poor mum, Liz. When did she pass?
She died in March 2020 after they'd thrown her out of an NHS hospital to clear beds for COVID people, and she was shoved into a care home and died 2 weeks later of COVID.
Deary me. I'm sorry that happened to you and your mum. Poor woman.
Yeah, I'm not here to
no.
this, but I'm just talking about... I'm talking about the justice system. It stinks.
Yeah, it's a good example. It's broken, completely broken.